Good evening and welcome to our kickoff of Inside Government for the fall 2017 semester here at QU Community College. This is a show that is broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, and WDWM, WDNR, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. We are delighted to have as our first guest, as we do every semester, the mayor of the city of Auburn, Michael D. Quill, who is in the middle of his third term as the mayor of the city of Auburn. He sits on a council of 5 members. 4 other members are Democrats as well.
That's correct.
And 2 of them are up for re-election this year, and that is Debbie McCormick and Terry Cuddy. They will both be here hopefully in the studio next month for our first of our forums. A lot's gone on since we had the mayor here in the spring. We'll talk about not only issues of the new visitor center that was just announced with Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul 2 weeks ago, but also what is on the front page of today's newspaper is that we taped this on Tuesday regarding blue-green algae in Owasco Lake, which is the source of drinking water for about 40 to 60,000 inhabitants
Correct.
here. So we're delighted to have you back, Mayor. Welcome back.
Glad to be here.
How was your summer?
Very nice and warm, and had a lot of fun. Had the family around and got some chores done. So
And how many grandchildren now?
We have 4 grandchildren, 3 boys and 1 little girl, and our little girl Aslan is the boss.
And she's the one, and that will be the way it is for the rest of you.
Yeah,
everybody's life.
The sooner the rest of them learn it, the better off it'll be.
So we're going to kind of extend. We originally do these for 30 minutes, but because of today's newspaper and some stories in the last 48 hours, you've agreed to extend this, so we appreciate that. So there is new tests that were done in the last 48 hours that they've been exposed, that there are some new toxins here. Right. What can you tell us about them? And I'm not asking you for a science basis, but what's your staff telling you?
The staff is telling us they're keeping a keen eye on the situation, trying to determine what is going awry or what isn't, how is it all working out. How is our powder activated charcoal working, which in this case
is your filtration system.
That is our filtration. It's between the testing between the raw water and human consumption end of it. It's a remarkable difference in it. So it seems to be working very well. So
the last comment I read in the newspaper from the county is that even though it seems to be these are higher levels and there's some new, I thought I read it, new toxins, I discovered that this is not a threat to the drinking water.
That's correct.
Does the city concur in that at this stage?
I haven't heard different. I haven't had a chance. The city manager is out of town. We have an acting city manager, but my day got away from me, so I haven't had an opportunity to talk with them. But at the same time, I did run into Seth Jensen, who is in
your utilities director.
Municipal utilities. The water issue did not come up, but I know if he was alarmed about it, we would have had a conversation.
So let's split this in a couple of parts. Let's deal with filtration first. So sure. Back in the late spring, the governor was here at Emerson Park, right, with you and Ed Wagner, the supervisor
Correct.
of Owasco.
Correct.
What was he here for?
He came with money.
Those are always the nicest visits.
I always enjoy when they come with money. I enjoy his visits anyway, but so what we did, and we were doing the research, the preparation for a powder activated charcoal, I never get the terms right, which will be added into the raw water side of it before it enters into the pump station.
So unlike we're reading about Skinny Atlas right now, right, and everybody's hair's on fire, and
right,
as they most likely should be,
right,
concerned,
right.
Auburn has a different filtration plant system than Skinny Atlas. So
right.
let's leave Skinny Atlas for So some of us are aware that if you go up to Troop Ave, right, there are the slow sand filters.
Correct.
It's the coolest caverns in central New York.
It could put a lot of kids through college.
Where you lift the sand out. And,
yeah.
So that's where mainly, is that where most of the city's water
yes,
is filtered through?
It is. The slow sand filter.
All right. So is this charcoal a second system being put in place?
The charcoal itself is actually added when it's called for, when the testing shows that there's an increase. It's actually induced into the water system at the upper pump station.
Oh, so it's not even down Troop Ave, it's out at the lake.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the first line of defense.
And what we're being told, and I have no reason to doubt them, the water travels from the pump station down to the area you're talking about on Swift Street. That gives the activated charcoal, carbon, whatever, a chance to work and to gather these toxins or remove them or whatever the case may be.
So the governor was here, like we said, in the spring at Emerson. How much did he announce?
It was approximately $2 million between the city of Auburn and the town of Owasco.
And so, just so people may be aware, or may not be, the city takes its water directly from where the seawall is. Underneath there, there's a pipe that goes down.
It actually goes out further into the lake.
But it's in that area and comes back in.
That's correct.
And Owasco does not come from that particular pipe.
Correct.
So they have a separate filtration system.
And that creates a little more of an issue for Owasco, because we have the distance between the upper pump station and a water filtration plant. The charcoal, the carbon has a chance to do its work, whereas Owasco is a much shorter turnaround from the lake to their pump station.
So are the charcoal filters now, is that system in place now?
It is in place, and it has been operational for probably a month, a little over a month.
So I talked to somebody earlier today who is a lake expert, not alleged, but is. He said this is his word, his phrase, lake-wide event over the last few days, and showed me an aerial, and I can see Owasco Lake, and I can see lots of green on the eastern, specifically on the eastern side of the lake, where it's high definition. Is what we're seeing now in the charcoal system that's being in place, is that enough for the future?
You know, in my terms, what's happened in Owasco Lake, it's also in Cayuga Lake, and now it's in Skaneateles Lake. To me, this is a good news, bad news. The good news is we have a short-term way of protecting our water, our drinking water that goes through our city lines. But there's a much larger issue. What do we do for Central New York, the Finger Lakes, to eradicate this blue-green algae? What do we do about it? What's causing this? What can be done? For years, it's been said that the inflow into Owasco Lake from our watershed has been poor, and it's created it. And that very well could be the case. But now with Skaneateles Lake having the same type of growth, do they have the same issues that we do?
So the issue has come down to a debate in these communities for more than a decade and a half. Is it development? Is it agriculture? Is it a combination of both? In your view, what is it?
I honestly don't want to say, because I don't really have a definite answer. I may have my feelings, but that would be inappropriate, I feel, for me to say what I think is on my mind. But there is, as you said, there's development of homes around all of our lakes. The farming community keeps growing and growing.
I talked to one group this morning, and they said, you know, you got to put it in perspective. There's several large farms in the southern part of the county that have 30,000 head of cows. Yeah. That's more people than live in the city of Auburn.
Absolutely.
And to put that in perspective, you got to. I mean, absolutely. I'm a visual guy, and I can.
But you know, at the same time, I think the farmers have taken a hit in regards to their practices. But farmers are great stewards of the land. That's what.
But they also are responding. So you have seen in recent months full-page ads. They don't necessarily say they're from the agricultural community, but there have been these full-page ads in the Citizen where they are explaining their position. Right. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
So now that Skaneateles is involved, so your fellow mayor, Mayor Minor, was on Capitol Tonight last night, and we'll talk about Councilor Cuddy being on last week on that show. Now that, because Syracuse gets that drinking water, now that this has impacted Skaneateles, which now multiplies the number of people impacted from let's say 60,000 people in Cayuga County to maybe 8-10-fold that for Onondaga. Do you think this gets more attention at Albany now?
That's why one of my statements was it's good news, bad news. It's bad news that it's occurring, but it's good news because this should bring more attention to a local problem that at one point was just Owasco Lake. Now it's spreading across the Finger Lakes. So
you as a city, you being the royal you, cannot just go out and regulate the watershed, though you are responsible for it.
Right. Right.
You have to have the state of New York sign off on, mainly the Department of Agriculture. And they have been reluctant in many cases on regulation, am I correct?
I want to say yes, but at the same time, it's with good cause. It wasn't just willy-nilly, no, we're not going to do that.
But they have not been overly ambitious to do regulation.
Correct.
So could this be the turning point?
I would hope so, only if it's for the better.
Okay.
There's many different views of what's causing this. And I don't know of anyone that's really made the point that this for sure is what's causing it, and this is what has to be done. Everyone has it's like a football team. Everyone has a favorite player as what's going right or wrong. Same thing with the water. Well, we think it's this, so we go after that, and it increases. Well, we spend our time and money here. We should be taking a much larger view of it.
So I mentioned Councilor Cuddy, who has, among your members of council, has really been a leading advocate for 20 plus years. He was behind the Smith Corona, protesting Smith Corona in the 90s and whatnot about water quality.
And the fracking, and Terry's been very involved.
So he was on Capitol Tonight last week, and he was asked a question by Liz Benjamin, and I will ask you the same question. Do you drink out of your tap water at home?
I do.
He also, though, said that in his own case, he does drink out of tap water, but he says he has I think he said 6-year-old. I think John is 6,
yes.
My neighborhood. They are not giving him tap water. They're using bottled water. Would you say the same should be for whether it's your grandchildren or whatnot?
My grandchildren are a little bit different. Part of them live in the town of Senate, so they have a well, but they also use bottled water for their children. My daughter and her family, they live in Marcellus, so I believe they come out of Aqua, so whether it's Canales or what.
If they're coming over to your house, Mrs. Quill, should she be giving them bottled water or should she use the tap?
She does a little bit of both.
Okay.
She does a little bit of both. So. But that's once again, I'm not saying Terry's wrong or that I'm wrong. It
was a good question. I'm asking you because it was a good question because you puts it in perspective. So let's switch gears,
Sure.
but state of New York still.
Okay.
Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul was here 2 Fridays ago.
Correct.
To unveil some things and some naming issues. What did she name? What did she come here to discuss?
She came to what we had for a long time called the Visitor Center. It's the Cultural and Heritage. I forgot the rest of the name, but it will be located in the parking lot adjacent to the Seward home and across from City Hall.
So it's still going in that park. I know you had at least one protester.
Yes, we did.
Another protester, and she got a lot of coverage for one person compared to everybody else that was there.
But the protest was very pleasant, very polite.
And she's not against the visitor center, she's against the location.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I've had a few conversations with her, but she was against any development there whatsoever. She enjoyed being able to see the church and the views of the Seward home. And that's surely her prerogative.
So Lieutenant Governor was here, unveiled the naming, design and all that. What's the timeline for this?
We just found out at a meeting today that it will be going out to bid within 2 weeks. Construction is hopefully to start right after the first of the year. A lot of it contingent upon the weather, winters in upstate New York, and opening, is my understanding, be August, of a little less than a year from now.
So it's an 8-month construction on here.
When you think about the building, there's no basement, there's no second story, which just makes it that much more difficult, not to build, but more time frame.
So any idea how much this is going to cost?
Somewhere between $8 and $10 million. A lot of it would depend on what the bids come back at.
And what's the city's share of that?
I can't break it down, but it's very, very. It's.
Is it mainly the property?
It's the property, basically. Okay. Yes.
Are there other costs that you're?
I'm sure there'll be some costs along the way that we've had to upfront to get things started, but I believe most of that, if not, will be reimbursed.
The majority of the 8 to 10 is
from New York State. That's correct.
And I think when we had you on last time, we talked about this. After this is built, then it's the city. Is it the city's operation after that?
It is.
And any idea? Have you got budget estimates of what that's going to cost in the future?
We are working with the BID, the Business Improvement District, and also McVanick from Tourism Board, they are going to be, their offices will be located in.
Oh, so they're moving.
They're moving.
Okay.
And so that will help offset some of the costs of it.
So what else is going in there? So walk us through, so everybody didn't go to the parking, or the unveiling at the parking lot, but that was well attended. You had a lot of different representatives from downtown businesses and whatnot. So what's going into the visitor center?
It's going to be a visitor center dealing with women's rights, very little about Harriet Tubman, but the abolitionist movement and everything along.
And it's more regional. It's not just
it's not just Auburn and Cuba County. It's the entire region.
So if it's a regional tourism office, why wouldn't the state be putting in more money from a operational? Because if it's Auburn, you'd want to just tout Seward, Tubman, Willard Chapel, the Cuba Museum, and Schweinfurth. I missed somebody in there along the way, but the five.
Well, our whole, or my thought anyway, is to get the people here. Get them here so they understand what a lot of people, and I've encountered this personally, that people come to see the Harriet Tubman home, no idea about William Seward. They have no idea. They walk right by his home because they walk up South Street into Harriet Tubman, and vice versa. They come to see William Seward, don't know anything about Harriet Tubman. So if we do this for everything, the Schweinfurth, our Cuba Museum, and everything involved, we'll be getting a hit locally. But the whole idea is to get these folks that are here for maybe a one-day tour to spend a night somewhere in the area and spend their money another day or 2 days down the road.
So I do a monthly talk at Boyle Center. Mm-hmm. I was there today. We talked about both the lake.
You weren't scalped or anything?
I wasn't scalped, no,
okay.
but we talked about both water quality and the visitor center. So
yes.
The viewer who watches, and is going to watch tonight as we play this, asked a great question. Wouldn't the $8 to $10 million being spent on the visitor center be better spent on water quality and lake issues?
It may. And I'm not saying that's not a good idea, but I'm looking at the governor to have many pockets with money in. Visitor, what is it, $100 million revenue a year from visitors in New York State or upstate New York. At the same time, there is, again, it's good news, bad news over the water quality. This will be an issue very much up front for the entire central New York as to our water quality. So I would hope that the governor digs a little bit deeper and comes up with some money for the water.
So in this particular case, and I think this is an issue that came up with the amphitheater in Syracuse. Mm-hmm. It was not necessarily, as I understand it, on anybody's radar 4 years ago to put an amphitheater. There were things to do because the fair grounds and the
didn't need to work.
They need to renovate the fair theater and concert area. But it wasn't necessarily that the city of Syracuse or Onondaga County had, let's build an amphitheater. The governor came in there and said, we're going to give you an amphitheater, and we're going to cover the cost. Is this visitor center similar in that type of mode where the governor and his staff have said, we need a cultural and heritage center, we're putting it at Auburn?
Well, probably.
You didn't ask for it.
We did in a roundabout way. If you recall the first DRI, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, the first year we applied for that, we wanted to build a visitor center slash farmers market slash open area in the area of the Owasco River, which would be just north of the Loop Road.
Across from the fire station.
Across the river from the fire station, between the old Marine Midland Bank and behind Nolan's in that area. We were not fortunate in receiving that. I believe Oswego came up with the winning entry that year. In the meantime, the governor turned around and contacted us, wanted to work with a visitor center. So we had to come up with some ideas where we could do it, how we could pay for it, and so forth. We didn't have a lot of details, just that he wanted to work with us. That was a good point, and it comes up, still comes up very often. Why didn't we take the automobile garage,
Expert
Tire, or the police fire station, or the OTB? The biggest reason is we owned the property, the parking lot on the corner of Lincoln and South. That was our city-owned property. For any of these others, we would have had to purchase that. And the more money we had, nothing is valuable until someone wants to buy it. Right. The more money we spent on purchasing it, a piece of property, the less we would have to reinvest into a building.
So let's talk about parking. So there's some secondary issues there, and one of these is the side issue of YMCA parking, but the city has come up with a plan for Court Street, and I think that's expanding the parking lot.
That's
correct.
correct.
I think there's some trees that are been cut down in the green space there. Yeah. What's being proposed, first of all?
The city and myself, working with the city manager and engineering, we're trying to come up with a plan to enlarge somewhat the parking area directly across from the Y on Court Street. It's presently a city-owned lot. There's probably 20 to 30 vehicles, space for 20, 30 vehicles.
Then there's the green space, and there's the old tennis court, then became a basketball court, right. and that's roughly where the cross is that you see from Genesee.
Correct,
okay.
But it's not going back that far. It would, in my mind, I picture the parking lot, the depth from Court Street going back to the west would be just about doubled. It's all presently city owned. It's not going all the way back to the hill or the tennis courts or anything.
So will the city own that? Are you turning it over to the Y?
We're negotiating. We're looking at both ways. What is the best for us? What is workable for the YMCA?
So who manages and who owns it is still up in the air.
That is correct. And whoever owns it will be responsible for managing it. I do believe, though, no matter what we do, we will maintain a presence on part of the property.
So that you'll help police it one way or the other.
Right.
So, because there's no easy way to do anything around here.
No.
Once you start announcing those plans, some of the neighbors who both either own businesses or live there or combination thereof have raised some questions about that.
Correct.
Seeker, State Environmental Quality Review Act and all that, similar to what drainage issues and things of that nature. The city was going to come back and propose something 2 weeks ago. It got put on hold. What's the status of right now?
In the meantime, the city manager has been meeting with some of the residents from the Court Street area, trying to work with them on some of their issues and what some of our issues. And at the same time, there was a meeting either scheduled or has already taken place in regards to the county. The county has an issue with the parking area in the rear of the county office building and flooding. So I know our engineering staff in the county and the city have been working in that regard.
When do you see something coming to you before council to put this all together? I
would hope rather quickly, because we have it money aside in our road improvement program. So we're hoping that we can get something started at least this year and go forward from there.
So I'll come back to parking in a second on another piece. You just mentioned the road program.
Yes.
Where are you on your annual road program right now?
That's a good question. They've had great weather. Hopefully they're moving forward as planned. I know Saturday they were working on Henry Drive, doing some road work there. So
I'm leading into that because there's 1.4 miles of road work that still hasn't seemed to been started, and that's the Genesee reconstruction.
The entire Genesee Street, you're saying?
Right.
That will be on next year.
So it will not be done this
fall?
No. Originally there was talk about it being
done. The goal line is moved 2 or 3 times, but everything will be in place, and hopefully the first good weather of next year, that will be done. And there again, that's a state project. So
no, but still, people were saying, are they waiting till winter to start tearing up the block?
I hope not.
Okay. Well, because I think when we had the manager here back in the spring, his hope was it was going to start by August.
Right.
And clearly we're through that.
The last I heard, I don't believe that's going to be the case.
Okay, so let's combine parking and Genesee Street. The other issue before council has been an issue raised by Hunter's Diner.
Yes.
Over by Wegmans.
Yes.
They're having some concerns. It sounds like because there are some new apartments in that area, that people are parking overnight, and you used to work the night shift, so I know you know this. A lot of people go to Hunter's Diner at night, and there's no parking, and there are no convenient parking in the sense of walking across the street or next door.
That's everywhere downtown.
But it's a convenience issue.
Yeah, and I know that the owners of Hunter Diner were at City Council. I've had a couple meetings with them in regards to this. But Hunter's is taking a big hit, and it's other merchants in the East Hill area that are complaining of the same thing.
Yeah, I just mentioned Hunter's because
but I want to clear. I'm not taking issue with you. I just want to clear the air that it's more than just Hunter's that has this issue.
So clearly, when you go to the city, so I know for downtown apartments, the apartments on State Street, those owners of those properties had to get either permits in the garage or find off-street parking.
Right.
Does that still have to be done?
It does.
But it doesn't mean people comply with it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Keep in mind, I'm sure you're aware of this, after 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, there's no parking enforcement, as we know, during the regular week. So if someone pulls in there, whether it's on East Hill, it's in front of Hunter's Diner, or it's in front of Parker's or Lynch's Furniture, they can leave the vehicle there till Monday morning.
So there was a proposal that was initially dropped out that said, or dropped on the table that says barring overnight parking all along downtown.
Yes.
Is that still on the table?
What the council agree with me. I use the term baby steps. Let's worry about Genesee Street. Let's not worry about Market Street, Seminary, all the other
auxiliary. When you say Genesee Street, you're talking about East Genesee Street, not the whole Genesee Street.
The length of Genesee Street.
So you would like to see something dealing, let's say, from James to John.
That's correct.
Okay.
Let's look at a big issue also is snow removal. If someone comes home on anywhere they live on Genesee Street and they park there on Friday evening, if we get a snowstorm Saturday morning, we don't have a chance to remove the snow till Monday. And the street is a mess, and people are complaining that it's not being plowed.
And it's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
From a site. So when do you see something before City Council?
I would hope in the very, very near future. And I don't have an exact date, but I would hope very
So
near
you've
future.
got at least 2 controversial issues on the agenda. So let me ask you this question. You got at least parking in Court Street, and you got, whether it's overnight parking or all the strip.
Mm-hmm.
Just because this is an election year doesn't mean you're not doing anything between now and November 7th.
No.
Are you pulling anything from the agenda between now and
No.
November 7th?
We pulled something the other night, but it wasn't anything of any large magnitude.
So you still think you'll be making major decisions as you go through this?
I plan on it.
Okay.
I've lost my train of thought.
Sorry, I just asked about it
that's
because
fine.
you got about 40 days before the election, and sometimes councils say let's stay away from anything that's a hot topic.
I'm sure they do, and I'm sure we do, but nothing, the parking or none of that is, as far as I want to move forward with it.
So let's, if you remember what you were thinking of, interrupt me. So let's talk about 2 big pots of money that are still out there. One is this downtown revitalization. You mentioned it, the DRI. Right. It's $10 million. What did the city submits the application.
Right.
What are some of the projects that are in there?
I know there was something to do with I believe with the Auburn Public Theater.
So you got, if I remember correctly, you've got the silos that the Auburn Brew Pub would like to put in if they do the Nolan's block, and you talk about the Farmers Market and all that. You've got Auburn Public Theater. You got Good Shepherd Brewery which is the old PBJ on the corner across from Metcalf Plaza. You have the Shines Theater in that mix. You have a program from the Bartolottas. I know somewhere in that mix is the college with a program.
Correct. Yeah.
All of these, how were these projects chosen? And because I ask a math question, no way that I can do the math here that they're not over $10 million when you put it, again, the people from Shines, they spoke last week, they said their project's 12.5. Yeah. Even if they got all the grant money that they've applied for, they still need another 8. So you can't do everything.
No.
So how do you prioritize?
A lot of it was on with public input, with our public meetings, what do people want? But keep in mind, if you're successful in winning the DRI, first thing right off the bat, the government, the state sends us a consulting firm, and they work with us.
They pick somebody. So this is what they did in Oswego.
Right. And
hearing Mayor Barlow up there, they come in and they prioritize what your projects will be. This is not necessarily something that's decided by the first floor or the second floor of 24
That's correct.
South Street.
That's correct. We put all our thoughts into it, and they have their meetings in the public. But they make the decision. We feel it should be going in this direction, whether it's out West Genesee Street, out South Street, or whatever the case may be.
So you mentioned Oswego. This year, who's your competition?
Cortland.
And there can be applications from Syracuse and Fulton, but it's really down to the 4 of you. And you think it's Cortland?
I think at this point it's between Auburn and Cortland.
When do you think you'll hear? Because I think some regions, 5 regions have heard, I think,
that's
so
correct.
far.
And there's no timetable to it. We're not going to, we haven't heard that the 1st of October we're doing this, and that we have no idea.
Yeah, I thought I heard from somebody yesterday. They said, well, everybody said they were going to be told on August 1st. That's not how government...
What year?
What year?
Yeah.
So, but that did lead to an interesting question yesterday, and somebody said, so Kathy Hochul was here 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And you know where this question's coming from.
I can only guess, but go ahead.
Kathy Hochul was here talking about an $8 to $10 million visitor center.
Yes.
Do you think lightning can strike twice where Auburn could get both the visitor center and then another $10 million for DRI?
I'm an optimist, so I'm hoping it does. Whether it does or not, that remains to be seen. The governor is very competitive, enjoys competition. What he determines is the most valuable, most needed in a particular area is entirely his call. I know he has advisors and so forth, but this. If you look at it though, this visitors center to me is from last year, so we
shouldn't count for this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So separate from the DRI, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, is the Red Sea, the Regional Economic Development Councils. That is separate, and that is something that you'll hear about in December, correct?
Correct.
You're a member of the Red Sea Board?
Right.
Who else represents you?
John Courier, there's myself, I believe Keith Batman is awesome.
And Tracy Verrier from the Chamber.
That's correct.
So Auburn has applied for some proposals in that too?
For the consolidated funding application, is that where you're going?
Yes.
Yes.
So are they duplicative of what has already been applied for, or are there other new things in there too?
I think it's a mix. What I've seen of it, there's a few on there, and I do have some knowledge, but I'm not allowed to speak of it. But there are some different ones that were not considered in the DRI.
So not that it's some state secret, but we should say it this way. That group, the people who sit on that board, review the proposals. They don't vote on their own proposals, but they review others in that. So
That's correct.
Mike Treadwell, who happens to be on my board up in Fulton, he reviews proposals from Oswego, not from his own community, but he reviews Cortland County, Madison County, Cayuga, Onondaga, and Oswego. You're all in that.
Right.
And then there's so I guess that's about a 20-member board, something roughly like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And so we should hear by December in that?
In talking with some of our planners, and I will not say who they are because it doesn't make any difference, they look more favorable on the consolidated funding application than they do the DRI because it's a quicker turnaround. You know right away if your project has been selected and you can start moving forward. Whereas with the DRI, you still have to go through the planning process and jump through all those hoops.
I have an iPhone, somewhat older, but I popped it up today and I went to the Citizen website and I got an ad it's usually a music ad when I pop up, but what I got was Take the Test and Stand With Us, which is a new ad campaign from the Auburn Police Department.
Correct.
What's it for?
To recruit people to take the initial test, the written test for appointment to the Auburn Police Department. Chief Butler, Chief Anthony, and other people are doing a fantastic job with the community, getting out into the community.
So you can, the test is in December, and I think you have to apply on or before November 2nd.
Could be. I don't know how I thought.
We're trying to do a show with the chief, and I'm not sure it's going to occur for that. So how does somebody apply? You in your life have taken a civil service test?
A couple.
So how do you apply for this?
You would apply at the second floor of City Hall, Memorial City Hall. It's adjacent to the city manager's office. All the paperwork is there. They'll assist you in answering questions. They cannot fill out the application for you, but they will work with you. And I'm sure if you contacted Chief Butler at the police department, you had specific questions, I know Chief Butler will do his best to answer the question or assign someone to do it.
So I've never heard of an ad campaign by the city of Auburn like this before. Is this a new initiative?
Not too many years ago when I was fire chief, we were having trouble recruiting minorities. And with Mayor Carnicelli, we hired 2 gentlemen out of Syracuse to try to recruit minorities to take the firefighters.
And did it work in the end?
No, it didn't.
So how many slots? So is this to hire minorities and women on the department, or is this just to get people to take the test?
To get people to take the test. And as you know, it's civil service, so you have to be in the top 3, I believe it is, to qualify to take a physical, to do all their other testing. And then there again, it depends on an opening in the department.
And do you have openings right now where you'll be hiring in this group?
I can't answer that because I don't know.
So we'll hear about that in budget time.
Yeah. And keep in mind though that openings occur throughout the year. There's, you know, first of the year we don't have everybody retire.
Everybody doesn't retire on the same day.
No.
Unless there's an incentive.
In that, yes. But all of our jobs are like that. Police, fire, public works, clerical staff.
Not going to let you go out of here. We're going to ask all of our government guests in the next 2 weeks on this. Voters are going to be asked next month in November. In November on the ballot is whether they would like to have a constitutional convention to review the Constitution and possibly propose a referendum to go before the public. Do you support it or do you not?
I do not support a constitutional convention.
Why not?
In my own terms, I think it's opening a can of worms. I really don't know. What I'm hearing is not favorable to the way we live and work, enjoy life in our area, and I would be totally against it.
So is that, some have said if you're not for it, the system, do you think the system in Albany is currently broken? I guess that's a bigger question.
At times, yes.
So how do you fix it? If you don't do a constitutional convention, because it doesn't look like the legislature in Albany, unless they get indicted, and I know Dean Skelos got a new trial today.
I see that. I see that.
How do you fix it if you don't do a convention?
I really believe it belongs.
By the way, if you had said yes, I have an opposite question for you too.
That's okay. I flipped a coin in my mind, say which way. You know, a lot of the problems start locally. People do not turn out for an election unless it's the presidential election, and then the numbers of folks that actually vote is very low, very poor. People want government to change. They have to get involved. They have to endorse a candidate that they feel is going to carry their message forward and work with them and do whatever they can to have that person elected.
So is it more about who you elect and send to the Assembly and the Senate and governor and other positions versus the structural pieces of New York State government?
It's more of who we send there, but it's still the structure of our government. So, and I'm not optimistic that a constitutional convention would change an awful lot of that. So, at the same time, I do want to say all our representatives to Albany have been wonderful with us. They have really, you know.
But isn't that usually the problem, that we say that we don't like the institutions, but we love our local senator and we love our local assembly?
It's all the other people.
Yes, we'll be asking that. Brian Kolb, the Assembly Minority Leader, will be here on Tuesday. We'll be asking him the same thing.
That's fine.
But a little bit more expansive. Mayor, thank you for joining us for our kickoff of the season.
Thank you.
Joining us for this extended period, and hopefully you'll be back in a couple months, couple weeks, hopefully, once we get through the forums.
Whenever you want to invite me back, I'll be back.
So we wanted to again thank Auburn Mayor Michael D. Quill for joining us today for a city update, and we look forward to having him come back soon. We'll be returning in just a moment with Beyond the Front Page, our first show of the fall semester as well, with Finger Lakes Arts Council President Susan Waby about the 5th annual Art in the Park held at Hoops Park last week, as well as her new book, Downtown Ducks. That's just our timer hitting off. So we'll be back on Thursday also with an Inside Government with Jeff Parazola, the Superintendent of Schools for Auburn, who will talk about Holland Stadium and the changes there, as well as the kickoff of the new year. We'll then be followed by Beyond the Front Page, talk about the E. John Gavras Center and what their new capital campaign is as well. On Tuesday, as I just mentioned, we'll have Assembly Minority Leader Brian Kolb here to talk not only about his possible run for governor in 2018, but more importantly about the Constitutional Convention ballot that we just discussed. And then we'll also have an update from Auburn Doubleday's manager Adam Winslow, who will talk to us about the 2017 season and what he plans for 2018. As we switch to our normal schedule of forums right after that for the Cuyahoga County Legislature and the Auburn City Council. I would like to take a moment, if I could. He's not in the studio, but we do want to thank somebody who left our telecom department, who's an integral part of these shows for the last 11 years. Sean Secor of Auburn has left Cuyahoga Community College to run the television studio and labs at SUNY Oswego for another Burnian, Mr. Muchler, full-time. He was a great member of the team here, and he will be missed. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can send us your ideas for questions and thoughts for future guests to Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for QU Community College. We hope you'll stick around for Beyond the Front Page. We'll be right back.